at steering things up. And with Gordon pushing internal affairs to go after Flash would be difficult to replace. And if he were to talk?
Let me worry about Flash. Relax, Carmine. I got everything under control.
What the hell's going on?
The lights! What happened to the lights?
Ladies, gentlemen, you've eaten well. You've eaten Gotham's wealth, its spirit, but your feast is nearly over. From this moment on, none of you are safe.
This is the moment when Batman announces himself and his intent to the corrupt officials and mob leaders that run Gotham City. It is also the moment when Frank Miller's Batman changes from being a madman dressing up like a bat into a legend that can bring hope to a lost city. Batman Year One is widely regarded as one of the best Batman stories ever told, and is the go-to origin tale for the character. It is also often cited as the starting point for many popular takes on Batman. From comic books to TV shows to films, it has left its mark, and is the model for what Batman is, and should be. It shows us that all people need when they are faced with the worst humanity has to offer is a symbol to latch onto to guide them through the long, dark night. Published in 1987 in Batman issues 404 to 407, Year One by writer Frank Miller and artist David Mazzucchelli chronicles police officer James Gordon's first year at the Gotham City Police Department, as Bruce Wayne returns to Gotham City to begin his war on crime and become the legend that is Batman. However, Year One's story isn't solely a Batman story, it is equally, even arguably, James Gordon's story. He receives almost the same amount of attention as Bruce Wayne, and his actions drive the overarching plot forward as much as Batman's. He both opens and closes the story, and much of the emotional hook of Year One centres on his inner struggle, where he must reconcile his past troubles and current worries with his need to bring justice to a corrupt city, the arrival of Batman acting as the spark that wakes Gordon up from his stupor. The impact of Year One can be seen in how the Batman stories that have come since use it. In comics, its motifs and key scenes are endlessly referenced whenever we flash back to the past, or look at the reasons why Bruce became Batman. There are also many reworkings and remixings of Miller and Mazzucchelli's work over the past few decades. Batman, A Mask of the Phantasm, evokes imagery from Year One, but uses it to show its Bruce Wayne's struggle between leading a happy and fulfilled life or becoming Batman. The current in-comics continuity origin, Zero Year, because Zero comes before One, takes some of the key beats of Year One but changes their order and context of them around. There are also parts of Year One that have evolved into their own Batman tropes. Every Batman vs. the Cop sequence pulls from the tense events of issue 3 of Year One in some way, where we see Batman cornered with no means of escape, the full force of a highly trained SWAT team closing the net around him. Then, just when all hope seems lost and because he is Batman, he turns it around through a mixture of preparedness, skill, luck, and sometimes, but not always, bats. The controlling idea of Year One is that the individual really can make a difference and bring good back into the world, an argument that rings true as the idea of Batman forms in Bruce's mind and how he then goes on to inspire others, an argument that plays out on both the micro and macro levels. Micro through Bruce and Gordon, then on the macro as the mood and tone of the city changes over time. Bruce Wayne's journey through the story justifies him becoming Batman. In the first issue we see him plan and prepare upon his return, and in his first night out as a vigilante things go horribly wrong. His well thought out disguise is immediately seen through. The person he thought he was helping turns on him as soon as he is distracted. The police arrive and shoot first rather than ask questions. He only escapes from them and drags himself home through a sheer force of will, but it breaks him. The city has chewed him up and spat him back out. Just as he started doing what he wanted, fighting crime, he realises he cannot do it as he currently is. Then, because he has a flair for the dramatic, he sits slumped, bleeding out in his father's armchair, remembering the worst night of his life. He asks for a sign, one that the universe delivers to him in the form of a bat, the thing he was frightened of most as a child. The words, "Yes, Father, I shall become a bat," send a shiver down your spine because you know what comes next. The legend is born, and both Bruce Wayne and Gotham City will never be the same again. Unlike The Dark Knight Returns, where Miller handled both the writing and art, David Mazzucchelli was brought in to give the story of Batman Year One a more grounded and realistic feel. Everything in the book feels alive while also being given the necessary styling and visual subtext to deliver the story. Mazzucchelli's visuals are so strong that we see many versions of Batman in other mediums try to recreate them, with the most used moment being the death of the Waynes. Its overuse adding to the argument Hock Tate types live off, that we no longer want or need to see the single most defining moment of Bruce Wayne's life. Psst, we actually do. We always have to. It gives us context for what comes next. We just don't need it to be presented to the audience in the form of a music video like Zack Snyder does. In drawing from this moment from Year One, just look at how it's presented to the reader in the comic itself, in a dreamlike flashback as Bruce Wayne sits concussed and bleeding out on an armchair in his father's study. What happens is how Bruce remembers it. It is his nightmare, because it is the moment he lost everything. Batman Year One is a rich and complex story, and has even received a straight-up adaptation of its own, but perhaps the most well-known adaptation that pulls heavily from Year One, but does not completely adapt the story, is Batman Begins. We see all the key elements and moments from Year One used in some way within Christopher Nolan's film. Gotham being held in the vice-like grip of corruption? Check. One man making a difference? Check. Batman versus the cops, this time with bats? Check. A quick and sudden death for the Waynes? Check. Gordon as the one cop who gives a damn? Check. The Batman-Gordon dynamic with the slow building of mutual trust? Check. Batman Begins takes the basic formula and controlling idea of Year One, that the individual can make a difference when all hope seems lost against evil, but reworks it into a story that brings in the prerequisite 2 classic Batman villains per Hollywood movie, and of course, a love interest, putting the spotlight on them, ultimately overriding the noir story of weeding out corruption in the city from Year One. Much of Begins' second act, with Bruce returning to Gotham and starting to fight crime as Batman, is taken directly from Year One. Many of the characters from the book also fill out the cast, both as secondary and minor roles. Then there are other twists on parts of Year One, like Detective Flass's account of Batman's attack on his drug deal being turned into Begins' version of Batman's big debut.
I'm Batman.
The arrival of supervillains to Gotham in the form of Ra's al Ghul and the Scarecrow echoes the end of Year One with the plot to poison the city's water supply. Then, speaking of endings, we get a similar tease for the Joker, but instead of focusing on Gordon waiting for Batman to arrive, we see how the meeting plays out instead. Begins also uses Year One's reasoning for why Bruce needs to become Batman by bringing hope to Gotham City through his actions that turn him into a legend, into an idea that will stand the test of time. Something that comes to fruition at the end of Year One when Jim Gordon and his wife Barbara's newborn son is kidnapped by Falcone's men, in revenge for Gordon overcoming his internal conflict and sticking to his principles. As the gangsters drive off with baby James, and Jim shoots Bruce off his bike thinking he is another gangster, then steals the bike and sets off in pursuit of the getaway car. We see Bruce looking down the barrel of a gun in the hands of Barbara, a purposeful mirror of that fateful night, except this time he's the criminal, and the innocent person is holding the gun. Then, rather than diving towards her and taking the gun from her with some kick-ass martial arts moves like Batman would usually do, he instead pauses and asks her to trust him. Still pointing the gun at him, she does nothing, because she realizes who this mysterious biker really is. He is Batman. The man her husband has spent most of the past year trying to arrest. The criminal the newspapers keep saying is the hero in the same column space that they call her husband one. The man who is taking on the mob and the corrupt police force who have kidnapped her newborn child. The man who has just promised that he will save her son. In one page of a comic book, we see the argument for the controlling idea made. Barbara trusts him, and she lets Bruce go to try and save her son, which 2 pages later he does so, proving the argument and returning hope to Gotham City by stopping what happened to him from happening to somebody else. His whole reason for starting his war on crime solidified as he stands in the mud and hands baby James back to Gordon as Barbara looks on. It ties everything in Year One together in one perfect, poetic moment of a normal man just doing what he can to help the people around him. While in Batman Begins, the same message is given to you, but instead of building up to a powerful crescendo that acts as the film's climax, we instead get a well-written conversation between Bruce and Alfred.
People need dramatic examples to shake them out of apathy, and I can't do that as Bruce Wayne. As a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible. I can be everlasting.
slapping you around the head with the message of the movie so that it sticks with you for the next 2 hours until the credits roll. Well, the actual climax of Batman Begins, rightly, for its story, is about Bruce and Ra's al Ghul's relationship and conflicting ideologies, except we see Batman let Ra's die, which somewhat undercuts his whole argument for being better than the criminals that he fights.
But I don't have to save you.
Don't get me wrong, Batman Begins is still a great movie, and shows how the basic formula of Year One can be used to tell a good Batman story, but as is often the case with amalgamated comic book adaptations, it just takes the cool bits and the main idea, and that's about it, missing the point of what makes Batman, Batman. In Begins, we're just told Batman is doing a good job, and that he has changed things rather than seeing the results of it in action. While in Year One, we see the mood of the city change over time. At first, in how people react to Batman, the police briefing on him being a mixture of awe, fear and skepticism, then how the newspapers are emboldened by Bruce and Gordon's actions, calling them both heroes and making sure everyone knows who they are, even giving Gordon some protection from Commissioner Loeb in the process. Then it all comes to a head in that fateful Batman vs the Cops moment where the gathered crowd cheers for Batman as he knocks a member of the SWAT team through a wall. There are lots of different versions of Batman in popular culture and the comics that started it all. There's just something about the version of the character we see presented in Batman Year One that keeps drawing people to it as a point of inspiration, instead of the other common version of Batman we see time and time again where he's this larger-than-life figure who can stand toe-to-toe with godlike figures. In Year One, we see him presented as a man with a mad idea that turns into something much more than that. We see him struggle, we see him fall, we see him get up again to keep fighting and doing what is right, always learning, always improving, always working with like-minded people towards making Gotham City a better, brighter place to live.
As for me, well, there's a real panic on. Somebody's threatened to poison the Gotham Reservoir. Calls himself the Joker. I've got a friend coming who might be able to help. Should be here any minute.